With our guest, Eddie Kozak Sr., musician extraordinaire. I am Walter Schewe, and this is Perspective. Mr. Kozak, let's talk about John Philip Sousa.
Well, John Philip Sousa, when I mentioned that I played under John Philip Sousa, I could say I'm possibly one of the last of the Mohicans because they're all gone. But by the same token, the word John Philip Sousa, people might think is a breakfast food or something like that. But he was the band leader of his own band, but he come out of the United States Marine as the conductor of the president's own band, and then when he retired, he went into the business of furnishing concerts for people throughout the country. Now, in those days, this was remarkable. You must appreciate I was born before radio and air conditioning.
Yeah, especially the air conditioning.
Before air conditioning. And when this all took place, I got in with Krill to play what they call the Chautauqua system. The Chautauqua system went into the small towns to play with a fine concert band because people never heard anything like that. They had their local band, but they were, you couldn't tell them that, but they were terrible, understand?
Sure.
These country band. Possibly Shreveport was not much better in those days, see? It all depends on how far back you can go. But the idea is that we opened our show in St. Petersburg, Florida, and we played every town in Florida, good-sized town, you know. And those years, the concerts were held, and the natives come from the north to spend their vacation in Florida.
Right.
But when you went to bed at night, you had to crawl under sheeting, netting, because there were so many mosquitoes
right.
out of the Everglades, they'd eat you up. It was terrible. Everybody had a netting over his bed. And we played concerts, and when we started through Georgia and all the way up into Illinois, and we played what they call the Chautauqua was a 5-day affair. One day would be a fine concert band. Another day would be a very fine speaker, like William Jennings Bryan. Do you remember William Jennings Bryan? The man that defended in a legal suit, I forget what the name of the lawyer that finally beat William Jennings Bryan to pieces. And then we would have the Great Lakes String Quartet, a fine quartet. Then we play a theatrical company called It Pays to Advertise from New York. Various things. Every day was a different entertainment. It cost so much a day to go, or you buy a season ticket. That is for the. And the businessmen had to agree to sign to pay that 5 days so much money to clear them, and then they shared in what was left. Understand?
Sure.
Now that's what the Chautauqua was. That's all gone. And of course, appreciate, Walter, that I went into the music business playing before we had the talking picture.
I'm not going to ask you how old you are, Mr. Kozak.
Well, I'm 90 years old. And the talking picture come in, and that eliminated a lot of musicians. Before the talking picture, there were orchestras in every theater in the country.
Right.
There was a demand for musicians.
Especially the Chicago Theater.
Well, the Chicago Theater was the biggest theater.
Right.
That had 35-piece orchestra in it. Just imagine show business. You people today, not you because you've got a lot of experience, but the people today have no knowledge of what show business was like. You walked into a theater, the lobby had a pool in it with ducks and whatnot swimming around.
Sure.
Natty ushers would lead you to your seat. You sat down and heard a beautiful orchestra play either a concert or jazz number. Then they went into a big stage show, and then a first-run picture.
That's right.
75 cents admission.
I remember that. Now listen, let's run another tape here. Go ahead and roll a tape of another piece of your playing. Now, you recorded these when you were 89 and a half.
Yes, sir. And the idea is you have to have the breathing. You have to breathe deep and have a powerful lung.
Right.
And your diaphragm controls that breathing. But the misunderstanding is that they tell these kids, fill the horn full of air, blow, blow, blow. That's a lot of applesauce. You just project enough air to get that tone and you sing it. Remember what I said? Don't play notes, sing
them. That's right.
That's the way I was raised. And I had the reputation in Chicago as the man with the Kozak tone. But they were talking about my style, what I told you about where you play da 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 dee 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 dee. You see how I slow down?
Yes.
That's called rubato. That's show business. That's showmanship. That's selling it.
Somebody told me that Tommy Dorsey used to do the same thing. He had a little pinhole with his lips that he would breathe through. You never saw the man take a breath.
Tommy Dorsey played the most beautiful trombone with his theme song.
Right.
Da, 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 dee, dee. And his vibrato came from this, a little shake. They don't have Tommy Dorseys anymore.
No.
Today, we don't have sight readers. You know what we mean by sight reader? Put
Reading
a
the
piece of
notes.
music and play. That's what we call read the spots. That's kind of disappeared. Even the symphony orchestras, they have to take a number and go through it and go through it and go through it. Of course, there's a need of that to hold those sections in power. You see, I went into the music business just when they were changing the pitch. Now, that may surprise you. A, which is an open note on instruments, was 435. Then about 1915 or so, a little later on, they raised that pitch to 440, which became the international pitch in America. But Europe stayed on 435 for a long time after that. Okay? I want to add a thing that I was telling a person the other day. When John Kubelik came here, a great Czechoslovakian violinist, he brought an accompanist with him. And his accompanist played his recitals all over the country.
Yes.
When Kubelik went back to Europe, the accompanist stayed here and he became a great American composer, and his name is Rudolf Frimmel.
Oh, my goodness. What
That's
a
where
story.
Rudolf Frimmel started, as an accompanist for Kubelik. And he stayed here, and any music lover will tell you that Frimmel music is beautiful music.
Sure, sure. And I'm sure you must have played the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago.
Yes, I played there from 5 to 8 with my brother's orchestra, an 18-piece concert orchestra. People would come in. Of course, that was for society because they paid $5 for a dinner where dinners were $1.50. Understand that was the difference.
Sure.
But it was the Marine Dining Room.
Right.
And from 5 to 8, we played beautiful music, overtures without a rehearsal, no rehearsals. My brother would hand out the music, and we'd start at 5 o'clock, and we'd go one after another. We'd play overtures, selections, musical selections, most anything. And we broadcast every night on a station called KYW.
KYW.
And that is now a Pittsburgh station.
My goodness. And you know what they did to that hotel? They tore it down to make way for the Outer Drive in
tore it down.
Chicago.
I was last in the Edgewater Beach Hotel when I went to see Margie and my son when they were leaving that night for South America to play a tour of South America. Eddie was a great marimba player, and he was a soloist with the Cugat, Xavier Cugat.
Who recently died.
Abby Lane was his star performer on, as far as the singer was concerned, and Eddie was on the marimba.
Yeah, I saw them in Las Vegas in the about the mid-50s. I was stationed at Nellis Air Force
Well,
Base.
I was there the night that Cugat got caught with Abby Lane in the room.
Yeah, we know.
That was scandalous, you know.
I know.
But I also played for the Duncan sisters. You remember the Duncan sisters?
No, I don't.
There was Topsy and Eva, One was they were sisters, and one did a blackface. And they did this Duncan Sisters show, and I traveled with her for 6 weeks in Chicago, for 6 weeks of shows in different theaters. And that was a sensation. And of course, they didn't do very good business until Topsy went to Cicero and got liquored up one night, and she kicked the officer in the groin, and that put her in jail, and then the houses were packed from then on.
I'm sure. Mr. Kozak, I don't know where the time has gone, but we've got about 1 minute left. And
Well,
I sure thank you for coming on the program, Mr. Kozak.
It was a pleasure to come in here, and I remember you way back in Shoney's when you used to tell me so much about Chicago. It delighted me because very few people understand Chicago.
That was 8 or 9 years ago, Mr. Kozak.
That's right.
If you'd care to contact this program, feel free to write Walter Schewe or Perspective, either way. Care of Cablevision, Post Office Box 8934, Shreveport, Louisiana, the zip 71148. That's Perspective, Post Office Box 8934, right here in Shreveport, the zip 71148. And our guest tonight has been none other than Mr. Eddie Kozak Sr., a man, his horn, and his memories. And if you, well, this being a program about people, I'd like to welcome back two of our National Guard people, Captain Rob Baker and Sergeant Rick Harper from the 56th Air National Guard, right here, the headquarters at Fort Humbug. That's the program for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Walter Schewe, and I care.